arrest that won't reach the detention center. We currently, if you was watching news, 2 weeks ago, there was a spike in arrests. The jail got overcrowded. The juvenile court got cited for not complying with the consent decree. So, unfortunately, there were some young men who were part of 305, which means they are transferred to the adult system. They were being housed at the Youth Study Center, but just recently, because of spike in capacity, they had to be moved back to Orleans Parish Prison, which is not really good. So we are continuing to work to ensure that there are intervention programs that won't allow young people to be, first of all, be detained, and secondly, to assist them and give them resources to navigate the juvenile justice system.
All right, thank you. Judge.
Okay, I'm Paul Bonin. I'm a judge at Criminal District Court here in New Orleans, which has exclusively criminal jurisdiction over adults and also over some juveniles, who Ernest was alluding to, get transferred over. Typically, the most typical type of case where we're getting to juvenile court are armed robberies where they're charged. I really came along just sort of to answer any questions that anybody might have about something that you may have heard about or what's going on. I'm aware of the uptick just from my own docket of some juveniles on the armed robbery cases in particular. And I also had been approached in at least 2 cases, I think, Ernest, where they were asking, because of overcrowding, that the older juveniles be transferred over to the parish prison. But I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have about any jail practices that we have or methods that we have going on in court.
And just to piggyback on Judge Bonin, they have basically eliminated bail and juvenile court, but without a criteria. So we are still working to develop some type of criteria because it's illegal to not actually have any bond, and we don't want to give judges the full discretion and say, we're not going to put a bond on, but we're going to hold them. So we want to leave that option open where there are criteria that they have to follow so that, you don't abuse your power per se. And I'd just like to add one note. When we talk about fighting systemic institutions, when we talk about the criminal justice system, we can look at the judge and say, he's not doing his job. But I would say in some instances it's unfair because then you have to look at the police department, the district attorney, the public defense, all of these systemic institutions per se that has a role in creating this monster, right? And in juvenile code, what we're about is that given that it's African Americans, 88% of the kids that go through juvenile code plead guilty. So what kind of defense or what kind of alternative that we are putting in place that to ensure these kids are getting a fair shake in juvenile code, and also to ensure that their parents and the parents of those kids and the resources and looking at the root of where these problems are coming from, that they are addressed. And I'd just like to add one last note. We are coming up to 2020 where there's going to be an election and possibly a retirement of one of the juvenile code judges. I want people to stay woke because the last time they had the race, everybody walked in the door, right? There was no opposition, they just brought that leadership without any, resistance. So we have to be very, very informed and educated in a way to be able to hold them accountable to those elected positions.
I want to now piggyback on something you said, because I think it would be of interest to you. We did develop in concert with some national organizations and the Supreme Court a sort of a measurement, an assessment tool for determining the likelihood of somebody's being able to be released on bail or low bail or whatever, however you want to look at it, without too much risk to the public. And that has been in effect since about July. But to give you sort of the intractable type of problem, so it sort of registers, how many charges have they had in the past, what are they charged with right now, have they
asking them to give us data on the number of people who are in jail, how long they've been there, and the seriousness of the charge, whether they were felonies, whether there were misdemeanors, or whether there were crimes of violence. And we've not gotten that. I think we need to ask them again, because that I think that's telling. How, you know, we know people that stay in jail for 6 years on things they're accused of, and often that they have jobs, they lose them, they have family, they lose contact with them. You know, so it's a real problem, and it's a form of genocide. You know, it's clear it's a genocide. Ain't no white folk down there. You know? And
I think I saw one.
yeah, you saw one. I saw it too. and so it's us. And if we approach it from the standpoint that it's unjust, it's genocide, then there has to be a different outcome.
We also, too, for those of you who have questions, we're taking questions by way of our index cards. Yeah, and I'm going to pass this around, and then you can simply drop your index card, or somebody can collect them, and just pass them.
Well, can I give a practical example of something that in my court? When I arrived at criminal court on January 1st, 2017, there's over 320 cases on the docket. All right, 320 cases. This past Thursday, I finished the very last case that was pending back then. And in between, we've handled about another 400 to 600 cases. So, cases keep coming, but I agree with you. And the case that we finished was a 2014 murder case. And you're absolutely right that this is, if we have, you know, and I know the audience that I'm before right now. I've been a judge and a lawyer a long time. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I have a lot more confidence in our justice system than almost any of you. Okay? I'm going to say that. I'm out on a limb on that. But
Include me?
include you. But I mean this sincerely. That getting people to trial before a jury is the best antidote to what you're talking about. And it cannot linger for years and years and years. Getting them up, giving sufficient time that they are prepared, that their lawyers are prepared. When Ernest says to, there's, you know, I sort of tell this to lawyers that practice in front of me. If you ain't trying a case in front of the jury here, you're an insurance adjuster. You know, you're just talking about years. And that's what it is, you know. How many years or probation, parole, if you're not talking about trying the case. And, you know, we have a jury system, that's our system. And there ought to be a whole lot more cases getting decided by juries. And let me just say this, and the jurors, I've been there for, now, like I said, almost 2.5 years now. It is, the juries in our parish are very diverse. One of the things that's going to kick in soon, as you all know, it's technically in, but it's not into every case that's before us, is going to be the unanimous jury. And that's also going to have a huge impact, because when you have a less than unanimous jury, and we still have them, don't misunderstand that we don't have them, because any case for which somebody's charged before January 1st of this year, it still doesn't, on those 12 jurors, they get a 10-juror thing. A less than unanimous jury, even though there have been a couple of recent sort of ironic cases of defendants getting found not guilty by 10-2 jurors, it makes it much more efficient to convict somebody. And of course, if it's more efficient to convict somebody, it's more efficient to get a guilty plea. So that I agree with, you know, that we have way too many cases that are not being put before case, and even maybe, I don't know, it's a judge deciding the cases in juvenile court.
Right, so when you talking about Pat referring to if someone stood in jail for 6 years, they lose their job, I would disagree with that. If they stood in jail 90 days to 6 months, you lose out. Less than years. If you stay in jail 90 days, the likelihood if you had a job and a family is torn apart. And we talk about the law in theory, right, about what's happening, unanimous juries, a lot of other different laws that seemingly wants to help us. In theory, they are great. In practice, they are terrible. Because we don't practice what we say we're going to do. It's totally different. And what I've been trying to tell to the parents and the young people, first, we are educating ourselves about the issue, right? Then there's a sense of accountability on us. Because we understand how this machine works, right? If you get in this machine, it's going to grind you up, right? And it grinds you up to the point to where if you sitting anywhere from 90 days to a year, you are contemplating, I'm losing all this, what is my easy way out? And there come those insurance brokers, as you said, as in public defenders, saying, look, what's the best deal I can get for you? And once you take that deal, then you're trapping yourself for a permanent period of time. I'll agree with the judge on one thing. If we were taking everybody to trial, the system couldn't sustain. That's why we're in this position around, reforming the system. Because they can't afford to continue to lock people up for the periods of time that they have in the past. So, and even with that, it has a shift where they're shifting the money. And they always told me, if you want to organize something and change something, follow the money. If you follow where the money is going at, then you can make a change. And it's around educating our community.
All right. We're going to move to some questions now. Again, if you have any questions, we're going to take them by way of index cards. We're going to try to get to all the questions as they come in.
The first question is for the judge. How do you feel about the possibility of getting rid of bail bondsmen and fees?
Bail bondsmen and who?
Fees.
Fees. I feel very strongly about both. Now, let me explain this. We have a system that is pre-trial release is primarily built upon bail bondsmen, and they have a very, very, very strong lobby in the legislature, almost insurmountable. The advantage, single advantage to having a bondsman, so-called, is that if a person doesn't show up for court, theoretically, the bondsman will go get him. Okay? The bail agent or the, what do you call it? Bounty hunter. That a person who was out on jail, that somebody could go and bring them back into court and bring them there, theoretically. But practically, I see virtually none of it. Because the laws are now written for the bail bonding companies that it takes so long before you can even trigger the loss of money that the bail bonding would have to sustain, that by the time somebody gets around to doing that, whoever the poor guy is that was AWOL, he's been recaptured without the bond. You follow me? So the theoretical purpose for having them is that somebody's got some serious money to lose and that they're going to go out and bring the guy to court at that count. So that's number one. I ain't got enough years left in me to work on undoing the system. It is an intractable and maybe one of all the things that you talk about the systems that are at play. It is. Only because, that's number one. And because it is money that is lost, it's virtually flushed down the toilet. For years, families have been acquired a little bit of wealth, in the sense of maybe $1,000, $2,000, would lose it all just to get their child out of it. So that are being brought to court have to pay for it. I do think that is within reach. I think that's a possibility in the next 2 to 3 years in Louisiana that we'll see that type of thing done. Now, I don't think every fee or cost is inherently bad. And sometimes I even impose some or require some to be paid when I think it has some benefit. But then, so it's not an evil in itself, but in the far-ranging way that it has been used, it has become.
Thank you. The next one is for you again. It's asks, do you think this might be because the public defenders are so few and so overwhelmed? Overworked? I'm sorry.
I didn't get to write the full question. It was both for the fact that so many plea deals are being requested instead of going to the jury, and the fact that they're not responding to you when you're offering them the possibility. There's so
You want the short answer or the long answer? The short answer is no. All right? I think that there is a certain amount of sort of propaganda is too strong of a word, but you know, once you get a story out that a situation exists, I probably have in my court, and that's, you know, basically what I can talk about, maybe 20 public defenders that come through there, maybe. Really, on average, it's closer to 8 to 10, and I don't believe any of them have more than 4 or 5 cases in front of me. And they might, you know, in other words, they might have more cases, you know, I mean, I don't question that they have more cases, but not any more cases than the private lawyer would carry reasonably. And so I'm not, and believe me, I'm a big fan of, you know, public defender. I'm a big fan of having a lawyer. I don't put the public defender, I don't mean to suggest that they're given second-tier service, because I don't mean that at all, because sometimes private lawyers in the same situation, they're not in a rush to try something either. But overworked and overwhelmed, no, in my experience. I know that's what's bandied about as the problem, but sometimes, you know, you can do things this is a personal view of mine as a judge, a personal view. It's important for the lawyer to get down to business with the client and find out what are the facts of the case, find out what the prosecution knows, and get moving with the case, not trying to just, you know, put things off in the hopes of something that's probably not going to happen.
Right, so again, we're talking about a theory, right? You're talking about a theory of private attorney versus a public defender. And most parents I talk to are parents who really can't afford attorneys, and the first thing they say, I'm going to get a private attorney. And my question to you, if you pay this private attorney, how long are you going to be paying? Could you actually really afford to pay? And one of my lines is, with attorneys, whether it's a public defender or a private attorney, it's not like you're going to Walmart and buy a gallon of milk, right, and be able to go home and drink that milk. When you hire an attorney, he has no guarantee, unless he's doing something illegal. He has no guarantees that you're going to go in front of that judge and you're going to leave out there scot-free. He cannot guarantee you that. So you're taking a chance when you paying a lawyer. I've seen, you know, lawyers in juvenile court come up to folks and say, $15,000 for this case, $20,000 for this case. And I'm like, come on, you know, I know you want to get your son out, but can you afford to pay a lawyer? And I then advise them, if you have a public defender, you treat him just like you was paying him, right? And when he's not doing something, you disagree with it. And then if he's not doing something, you get in front of the judge, you explain to the judge, and you get rid of him. right? You get you another one, right? Because you have to have an attorney in the process. But it's no different. And that's what kind of, when we talk about educating, that's what takes most of the poor people out. You know, I've seen parents, you know, mentally, emotionally break down because they're like, I paid all this money to this lawyer, and there was this expectation, but yet, you know, and wind up pleading out, right? When you could have saved your money and just got the same results.
One of the more horrifying types of experience I've had as a judge is when a family becomes desperate. They think that something's going bad in the case because they have a public defender. And this is where I go back. It's not what you are. It's, you know, some are very fine and at the top of their game, and some are just as bad as any of the worst private lawyers, and some private lawyers are very good. But one of the most horrifying experiences is when you see a family who feels like somehow in their own mind they've worked it out that they have left their child in. And the way to rescue them is to go spend this money that they don't have on, just as you said, something that's not going to work out any better. And then you see it all come crashing down. I'm not permitted as a judge to involve myself in that, you know, but it is, it's a pretty rough sight when you see this. And of course the same thing went on in Bonn, you know, the people, I see too, you know, there's many mothers and grandmothers who come to court who are caught in this netherworld almost between feeling responsible for what happened. Why is their child or son or whoever here? And then on the other side, not being, you know, having a complete sense of helplessness about what can I do about it. So it's a very...
There's another problem, and we've touched on it. Criminal defendants are outgunned. I don't care if they got money. They're outgunned. The police have investigated. The DA's got investigated. They got infinite more resources put on a case and work it as than the public defender and the private attorney. The problem is the information that they gathered so much information, a lot of which would prove the innocence of the defendant. But the problem is they hide it. If they see information they think would help the defendant, they hide it. And we've had a number of cases where it's found it. There's nothing that when it happens, there's nothing bad that happens to assistant district attorneys.
I get here by something that happened. It wasn't my intent to be in this work, but what I'm telling you about, I experienced. I had public defender lawyers, and they were telling me, oh, they were talking smack, right? I just listened. And when I got in the courtroom, went to the judge, I said, look, he don't have enough experience. He's telling me X, Y, and Z. I was just writing everything down and saying. The judge said, okay, you question him about it? The attorney told the truth. Off the case. Sent another one. Same thing. I tell you no lie. When we finish swapping lawyers, public defender lawyers, in that case it was conflict lawyers, which is sort of under the public defense law, I wound up what I thought was a dream team, a lawyer, without spending a penny. Right? I'm serious. Without spending no money, did I get the results that I actually wanted? I couldn't, because I started to understand the way the system was working. But at the end of the day, the defense team that I left that courtroom with, I was totally satisfied with. One, because I didn't have to spend any money, right? And secondly, that they done the majority of the things that I asked them to do. So we have to educate ourselves more about these situations. And sometimes, parents, I tell you, 85% of the parents that we work with are women, which is hard sometimes, right? On them and having their kids in these positions. So we try to educate them to always bring a male presence with you in court, always have that kind of support. Because I tell you, as being an African or black man in 6th Street, when I walk in the courtroom, of course, for some of the families and women that walk in, I got different results. I got different responses, right? From me just.
Well, but let me also kind of give, and it's true, and you are going to get it, but also let me give you kind of an understanding from the judge's perspective of why that can happen and why it's not a bad thing. As a judge, when you're, let's say you're trying to make a decision, very critical decision about whether to release somebody on bail and substantially lower bail, put them on an ankle monitor, which I believe in completely because of this. A lot of people disagree with me, but I love it. Because I can find out where somebody is, where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there. But on this point, when you look out in the courtroom and you see a family, a cohort of people that are there for somebody who's in trouble, and you're making a decision, can I safely release him out into the community? Can I safely release him out into the community? The more people that are there, and the more diverse they are in terms of just what you're saying, whether there's a man there, a grandfather, an uncle, the brother-in-law to the sister-in-law, whoever, plus mothers, plus just family members, preachers that come to the church, to the court. In other words, you're just not going to overlook that because you get a sense of yes, that they're there. Now, and where you don't have it necessarily, I'm not saying that this is not, don't take this as a, but sometimes, and like going back to the monitor issue, one of the reasons why the monitor can sometimes work so well, the GPS monitor, is because some of the mothers will tell you as the judge, I can't control him. If I want him out, but I don't know where he's going to be tonight. Well, when I can find out where he's going to be tonight and see him the next morning and tell him, that gives more support to her. That she then has somebody, even if it's just me. But the more support people have in the community, the easier it is, as a practical matter, for the judge to make that release decision without considering the financial things in the same way.
Thank you, Justice.
This question here is for Mr. Pat. Why can't you get that data?
I don't know.
The question asks, why can't he get that data?
I made a statement earlier that we'd ask the sheriff for who's in the jail, how long they've been there, what are the crimes, serious crimes or misdemeanors, whatnot. And we've not gotten that data. It's been about a month since we asked. He said he was working on it. So I don't know why we haven't gotten it. Maybe I didn't ask. Maybe you thought I would not ask you anymore. But I think if you want me to, I'll ask him again.
I think, though, I can tell you this, pretty safely, my experience has been in the last, say, 8 months, that if I have somebody in jail in the dock for me, on, say, a drug charge, it's because they're being held on a parole violation at the same time. In other words, as far as people being held on drugs for bond, that's just almost non-existent today. It's pretty well, they're pretty routinely rolled out of jail. The misdemeanors, again, it may be something similar, some kind of probation violation, parole violation, that just needs to be worked out. But even that is addressed by us within about 10 days. So what we are seeing is those more difficult cases, crimes of violence, are most of the people that are in jail more than 30 days. In fact, sometimes I'm looking at it, he's in jail, he's got a drug charge, and I'm like, why were you here? agree with you though. I mean, you're still entitled to the information, and it's important information to have, and all I'm giving you is an anecdotal
Well,
sort of
let me ask you a
site.
question. Let me ask you a question. As a judge, what do you think, what do you do when you got somebody who's been in jail 4 years, waiting to be tried? What do you do on that? You let them go? Do you make the lawyers have a trial? What do you do?
Well, first off, we have a crazy little law practice here that if the lawyers agree not to try it, they ask to postpone it, the judge has to let them postpone it. So that's one crazy deal, okay? Number two, and there's a lot of reasons for it, but number two, I will and have threatened that if you don't get them to trial by the next time we set it, which was typically a 60 or 90-day turnaround, I will release it. And somehow that goes to the top of the class and it gets either worked out or tried. But it's the judge though doesn't have. I beg public defenders to file speedy trial motions. Speedy trial motion says if you don't bring the person to trial within 120 days, Judge Leonard can back me up on it. If you don't bring them to trial in 120 days, the judge must release it. Okay? Without pay.
Except when the defense lawyer has agreed to postpone.
Oh, no, right, yeah, right. But,
lawyer that follows that motion.
right, if it's a defense lawyer, if the defense lawyer said, I said, and I don't mean it in a more facetious, I don't want to mislead you. The idea that if the defense lawyers did this on a regular basis, they, and not the prosecutors, would be dictating which cases went to trial. Okay? And would get, it's very easy, and you make, I think you were making a point, and I want to, sometimes the cases that get pushed hardest are the easiest cases. The ones that if you push, they're going to fall. The tougher cases that require more proof, they might be lingering longer because nobody wants to get into the ring and wrestle.
And I'd just like to add, the prison industrial complex is a complicated place, right? So you got all these different institutions that have role there, while a defendant is sitting back there in jail, right? So at the end of the day, we can make decisions, judges can make decisions, lawyers can make decisions, but it's the consequences that those defendants have to face. And when you are facing a life sentence or being threatened by 30 or 40 years out of your life, they're putting you in a hard place. They actually are putting you in a hard place. That's why we have so many guilty pleas, because emotionally it becomes detrimental from a mental standpoint. That when you have Paris, they're telling me they're feeding sort of TV dinners now, right? So for lunch, you're getting a TV dinner. You don't have the opportunity to take a shower when you want. You're in a controlled environment. Psychologically, you're saying, how do I get out of here, right? And even though they are prolonged it from a defense or a district attorney, ultimately it comes down to the defendant, and it's just a complex and a difficult place to be in. And that's why we're talking about, we have to educate more, we have to do more prevention, because once you get in there, it's a well-oiled machine, right? There's a lot of moving parts. And when you are trying to tackle one part and change the way systemic systems are, it's like eating an elephant. Has anyone in here ever tried to eat an elephant? Right? So when you try to eat an elephant, if you take one bite off an elephant, which is huge, it's so tough to chew that one bite off an elephant. And that's how the criminal justice system is. It's a real complex place to deal with. And psychologically, it has an effect on those defendants. Short-term and long-term.
Okay, this is the next question. What is being done to stop pre-auditing the defendants who have only had a public defender lawyer for 10 minutes average?
prosecutor has the greatest leverage. In other words, you want to plead, you want to have negotiations, that's got to be done at the latest the Thursday before the Monday when the trial is set, to avoid that very kind of problem. I also, and I'll tell you this, and I think there's other judges that do it too, I consider my chances when anybody has to make these kinds of decisions, an open door. The family members can come into my chambers, we discuss it. I'll let them discuss it privately with their lawyers, with their family members, if they want to be with their family member in private, so that, at least as far as my practice goes, because I do think that's reprehensible, and it takes advantage. You know what, I want to say this a little. A lot of the people that are sitting in the defendant's chair have made bad decisions. They're not good decision makers. And they need time to process what's going on. And one of the things, like when Ernest was talking, one of the things about a private lawyer coming in, they want to give them the blue sky picture to get hired, and then give them the bad news a year later. But if you give them all the information, and there's been times, listen, it is very hard to sit there with people who have to make a decision, take a chance on an automatic life, mandatory life sentence, which means you die in the penitentiary, or take the offer of 35 or 40 years without the benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence. That is not an easy choice for anybody in the world to ever have to make. And I don't, and so the 10-minute deal, which is what, and I saw that used to go on. And I don't know that it's not going on, but it don't go on where I'm at, in my case.
The next one is, how can judges be made accountable for racial discrimination in sentencing?
You tell me. Pat said before we even got up here, it's sort of, how do you even know whether you're doing something like that, you know? You're sitting there, I don't think that I'm discriminating against anybody on the basis of race. And nobody's ever called my attention to it and said, well, you gave a sentence to that white guy over there. But, the reality of it is, on this silver, you say it's 85% juvenile?
88.
About 88. That says about 95 in my court. In other words, African-American defendants, there's an occasional Vietnamese defendant, there's an occasional white defendant, and typically the white defendant is, wrote bad checks, or, it's not the same kind of cases or the same kind of charges. So there's going to be that kind of a distinction in how they may get treated. It's very, very rare that you see a white defendant in custody over a period of time. But I don't, to answer the question exactly, it's hard to say, because,
I sat in a Thibodeau courtroom for 5 hours, and I watched a drunk white woman on her first charge get half the penalty of a black gentleman with the same charge. I watched 5 hours of discriminatory sentence.
well, and in that case, and I'm not challenging you on it at all, because believe me, I've been a lawyer since 1976, and I've seen more shit than you can believe. And part of it informs me about how I want to be judged. Okay, so I'm not taking that away from it. But there are processes, to complain to the Judiciary Commission on that. If you see something like that the judge is doing that. Good advocacy is also going to call the judge's attention to it. You gave my lady this, or vice, whatever it was, and the next guy that came up under very similar circumstances, I don't see how you can justify it. And if a judge is doing something that people don't approve of, there's all sorts of ways, not the least of which, in the individual case, is to go to higher court. You follow? And complain about it, which can be done against a judge who's doing something, and a lawyer can make a record saying this. But, and there's the Judiciary Commission, which is sort of like the court for judges. And, but I think it's very regrettable.
More than that.
And just touch to that end, we as Justice Beyond, we stand with organizations like Court Watch NOLA. Can you give your opinion about such organizations as that?
I think Court Watch NOLA has a very good mission. That they are interested in transparency in the courts, and I don't have any issue with that. In fact, I welcome, just as an example, the Court Watch watches. Were you in my court? Have you ever been in my section?
No, I was over in Judge Walton.
Right, you were across the hall, yeah. There's many matters that we take up in chambers with lawyers, the prosecutors and all, and it's simply because most of those things are easier to do inside of the chambers where lawyers, sometimes it might just be, Judge, I can't make it, or my daughter's graduating Friday from kindergarten or something. I'd like to have the case done another day, that kind of thing. I invite Court Watch into the chambers to watch what we're doing in those proceedings, which are off the record typically. We'll go back on and do it. I received today a draft of a report that Court Watch is going to roll out, I think, in about a week, which is highly critical of me. And, that's their report. In other words, it's their report. I don't really want to sort of go tit for tat about it, but I think it is what it is. That's what they want to say, and it's their report. I feel very comfortable with how I've handled myself on the bench, everything that I've done. And in fact, everything that they are criticizing me for was done in the open, on a public record, and it was, to my point that I was making, it was unchallenged. Nobody even, not the lawyer, not anybody challenged it. So, but I think they perform a terrific service of having people in the courts watching the court. I just don't particularly care for what they concluded in my case.
Thank you. The next one is, at what age can a juvenile be sent to adult jail?
He can be sent at 14 as a criteria that they go to. We send him at 14, but anything beyond 14, 15, 16 is automatically a district attorney discretion. You can just put him for a 305, and that's another thing, something we're working on. They use the threat of a 305 to transfer kids to adult prison because of the sentence they may face in the adult system. So they let them linger in the youth study center. They have kids over there for up to 18 months on a case that's supposedly supposed to be resolved in 90 to 100 days. But they hold them in hope that in lieu of saying, I'm going to transfer you to the adult system, opposed to you getting what they call a life sentence in the juvenile code will be to the age of 21, but when they're transferred to the adult system, the case can go from anywhere from 10 to 9 years. I wanted to say something about racial discrimination, about the justice system in a whole. As long as I think most of us in here are existing on this earth, we're going to face some racial discrimination. We're trying to undo 400 years of some shit that's all messed up. And what we try to do with families is give families a value system, right? Because that's what it do, it strip you of your value system, being incarcerated. So we try to build families up and say, you have a value system, you are worth something. Don't allow this system that you are going through to make you to believe that you are not worth whatever your life, because I find myself, even being in that system, even going to courtroom is disturbing, and it takes a whole lot of energy to tear it down. So other than tearing it down, we have to direct our energy in ways that's going to help and support families and build them up. And again, it's hard to say, but we have to be more accountable about ourselves and what the actions we in our household, in our community. We live in fear in our community. We don't want to tell no children nothing. We don't want to tell nobody else nothing. But we need to call it the way we see it, right? Saying, look, this is not right, right? Come on, let's get this together, because the end result is you're going to get in this machine. And once you get in that machine, it's hard to come out of it. And most people come out of it damaged. Financially, mentally, physically, it takes so much stress, it takes so much. I compare it to slavery. In slavery, they took us and separated us in different ways, right? And that's all the prison industrial complex is. It takes people out of their household and separate them. And once you can tore your family apart, it's very, very hard to repair in a way that I think it makes us all feel healthy again. And sometimes it never. And sometimes there are guys like I've just met, you know, who've done 41 years, 45 years, 35 years. And I want to tell you a little small story now, give it to the rest of the panel. I met this guy in the park drinking beer. Me and him, and Lehman Park in my neighborhood, right? You know, having a beer before he became a criminal court judge. And just like any other human being or anybody in the judicial system, I've been in this courtroom with, you know, several of my clients. And just like you said, when I want to go talk in the chamber to try to resolve the issues, he gives me that opportunity to do that with parents. But there are instances where I went there with parents, there's nothing I can do. So I just want to, you know, just have people have an open mind to when you're dealing with these kind of circumstances, to think outside the box and think of how you can win on all levels.
Thank you. The next question is, public defenders were some of the most overworked.
Answer my question. That spoke to almost exactly what Ernest said. If I had
What other question?
the statement underneath the question when I asked about the age, there was a statement as well.
Ask him, Mr. Dessler.
Huh?
Ask him,
Ask your follow-up.
Well,
You
basically,
remember what it was?
because there was a statement.
basically I said,
Give him.
no, you found it good.
I personally think our youth are being educated and demonized.
Undereducated.
Undereducated and demonized.
Well,
That was a statement.
yeah, well, I guess so, because you're talking about an education system that has a charter, you know, that's got it so divided and so separated. And again, we talk about systemic institutions. But again, it starts with us in the communities that we teach and understand, and still try to hold them people, you know, hold folks accountable. But at the same time, we have to educate them to understand what is actually happening. And I tell you, we live in a microwave world. People ain't got time to listen a whole lot, right? So we have to develop strategies that are visible, because everybody don't learn the same way, you know. Parents, I be trying to tell them, I don't want to hear all that, right? So I show them a graphic, and then they get it more easily. So we have to be innovative in a way, and strategic in a way that we are learning them different ways. Everybody don't learn the same way. When we talk about navigating these systems, people are holding two jobs down, they're trying to catch this child at the bus stop. You know, it's complicated, but I agree, yeah, we are, 400 years we've been being discriminated. So, I mean, if you think it's going to change overnight, you got to wake up.
Well, can I give a little, you know, and it's a small thing, but sometimes you have to take your successes in small doses, all right? And about the educational system. I had, before we were getting to the point of dealing with some release decisions on several young men coming over from Youth Study Center on armed robbery charges, they were coming over. I was hugely impressed because the school that's at Youth Study Center, I don't know how you feel about it, I've been impressed. In fact, it was almost like you hated almost to turn them out. And I think they let them go. They stay going to school now? They get out?
Yes, they do. I work there.
Huh?
I work
They do, huh?
They stay going to school.
Well, do you agree with me on that? I mean, I've been really impressed. These young people would come with their like report cards and papers, and I was like, wow, this thing is you know, what they're getting in there I felt, listen, I know how you feel about
No,
them
when you
being
hear
the-
from her,
Oh,
what is the
yeah.
difference? What do you
Yeah.
think it makes the
Mr.
difference?
Dessler, y'all can conversate after, we have to continue.
Because I have, yeah.
Thank you.
But Travis Hill.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Travis Hill is a school that's inside of an institution, right? And we're talking about a primary education outside of a non-structural system. So one, I would say, there's been many issues with Travis Hill. Retention of teachers and et cetera, et cetera. I won't blast them and say that they're not doing a great job. I've done a lot of work in the youth studies center. We were just I've done Easter brunch before Easter with the kids. So when we talk about educational system, in a controlled environment for a short period, it's easy to paint a beautiful picture. But we're talking about sustainable education that's going to allow a kid to reach his full potential. Under them circumstances, in some instances, it's much easier to have the attention because there's so much at stake, right? This is going to help me get released if I walk this line. But when you're not in a controlled environment and you have to catch the bus, it's just a different environment.
Can I just say this, interject for a second? I
Yes.
went from OPSB to CEF. I've been with both. That's a whole other conversation that we won't have right now.
Right.
Because I really just stayed just to hear what people's thoughts were about it. So, I mean, there's a lot I agree with, there's a lot I disagree with. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It says the public defenders are some of the most overworked people I know. They work without much needed resources. How do we fix the system for those who can't afford an attorney?
Go ahead.
One of my questions is always to district attorney because there's a retention problem with them. Also, why are they there in the first place? Right? So they come there and it's sort of like this experiment, right? I'm going to practice with these kids, this population, and then you come back 2 years later, it's a whole turnover. So, I don't know. It's really complicated. When you get a public defender, regardless of where it is, you just got to continuously call them, keep on that, and if they're not doing something, you can always go to Durham and say, look, this public defender is not adequate enough for my case or whatever, and say, look, I want more with you. And he will make some moves to make that happen. But again, it's about educating the community, having to understand how the judicial system works, and applying the pressure and holding people accountable.
You got to start at the beginning of the criminal justice system. You want to make changes. First, the cops are arresting only black children. For example, it's smoking dope, right? Everybody smokes dope. Only people getting arrested smoking dope is black folks. They're white people buying drugs from their white friends. All the people who are getting arrested are the black. So, it starts first with the police. If the police weren't arresting people, they wouldn't be in court. So you get in court, I like, if the police are doing a good job, then when we get in court, we see black and white defendants. That's where we start.
Last question?
It says, for what rational reason is a defense lawyer allowed to confine with a postponement knowing that do not have all the evidence to support their request? For what rational reason is a defense lawyer allowed to continue with a postponement knowing that you do not have all the evidence to support their request?
I'm not clear on the question.
Ask the question, whoever.
I'm not quite certain.
Okay, at what point does it get that we say, okay, a prosecutor presents a case, the defense continues to say, I don't have enough evidence yet, I got the evidence, I don't have it, and this goes on and on and on. At what point do we say, look, either you come here with this, or we're gonna have to make a decision and do whatever? I don't
is how I believe the law is, and I'll tell you how I hear it. I give an order at the beginning of the case. When a person appears there and pleads not guilty, the prosecution has 20 days to turn over certain evidence, including Brady evidence, which you mentioned earlier, which is evidence that they then have that would be helpful or favorable to the defendant. Then we set a date for the hearings on the motions that the defendant is going to have to file. If they haven't gotten what they think they should get, they love to come to court a lot of times and just talk. You follow? And they'll talk in circles. I'll make them stop. You have to file a motion and tell me exactly what it is that you say you don't have. And when they file the motion, we go through it point by point, and I apply to the best of my ability what the law is. When do you get it? If you get it, when do you get it? Now, after that, we go to the motions, and then we go to the trial. It's really not complicated, but you're describing this churning situation where everybody just likes to talk and keep it going around and around instead of in a linear deal to get it to trial. Trial's the only way. You know, I have a case right now without talk. I don't want to talk about a case, but just there's a witness who says saw 3 people steal a door. All right. Another witness who was already arrested for it said a guy was in on this slip. Well, if the prosecutor's not going to drop the case, you follow? There's only one way to resolve it, is to let the jury decide. Do I believe this one or I don't believe that? Or who do I believe in? The trial is the ultimate way to get it done. And if you do enough trials, you're going to find out what juries in this city believe about drug charges. Right now, one of the reasons why I don't think there's many people being held in jail, juries are very tough on drug cases in New Orleans. They're not at all sympathetic to prosecution on a drug charge. You know, that's because you find out what the community, in my view, is what they want to punish and not punish.
Everybody's got somebody in the family who's in it.
You hear that a lot. But you know, on the other side of the coin, and it's easy, you know, to just talk about the drug cases, but then you got to talk about the cases of child molestation and the number of people that have lived through that and have to deal with that, and then, you know, coming up in front of the jury and the jurors that have had experience. You know, in other words, we are not just at criminal court. We're not just dealing with the sort of, I don't want to call it simple because there's a lot of social issues about drugs and all, but we are dealing with very, very traumatic, serious, violent, often events, and they have to be dealt with. They have to be dealt with.
Anything else? The last question? Last question from our audience tonight, but if you all would just be so kind as to give closing remarks, take about 2 minutes, maybe tell us what we as justice fighters can do to kind of chop away or bite at that elephant and bring down or destroy systemic structural racism, and how we can move forward in action and what we need to do as a whole. So maybe we'll start with Mr. Pat, please. Give us your closing remarks.
I was here to give an update on the march.
Yes.
Yeah,
But I'm glad that I had an opportunity to comment on this. I believe that the criminal, you know, my daddy told me when I was a kid, the 13th Amendment says that we abolish slavery, except for serious crimes. And that's the catch-all in the end. The crimes are being enforced. They've been defined, they've been legislated, and they're being enforced to keep us in jail, to keep us in slavery. That's genocide. So how do we deal with that? We have to elect, I'm not calling it a constitutional amendment because we had a constitutional amendment on the 13th Amendment, they may take it out altogether. So I'm not advocating that. advocating that we seriously look at the people we elect as district attorneys, as judges, that we sensitize the people in our churches who will serve on as jurors about how the courts are being used. And the court is being used to grab young people, young black people, and once they put that stamp